Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
So as human beings, we experience separation. I know that I'm separate from the furniture. I know that that chair is separate from that chair. We all know that we're individual, separate beings. And this is good. This is the way we interpret the world. We interpret the world with our senses, with our sight, sound, hearing, taste, smell, touch. So this is necessary for survival. If I'm walking on a bridge, I need to know where the bridge ends, what's separate, where the bridge is, and where's not the bridge. So separation is the structure of life in this universe. It's a condition of being human. So this is normal, natural. It's the way of the world. In contrast, there's a mystical experience. In the mystical experience, we know that everything comes from one and that we are all part of the one. That all is one. So in the mystical experience, we know that we're all expressions of this one infinite, divine, eternal consciousness. And it's kind of like seeing the game of the universe. You might experience it as a joy, bubbling up happiness, joy of being able to see, oh, this is the game we're playing. That we're all expressions of this one infinite eternal, but we're experiencing life as me, as you, as dolphins, dragonflies, ants, or whatever. Just all the myriad ways of being and expressing here in this universe. So you may experience, that mystical oneness with serenity, with a quiet, with silence, with solitude. You may experience it again as just like overwhelming joy at the all in all. So we're doing the series on the book, The Wise Heart, a guide to the universal teachings of Buddhist psychology. And Buddhism, in this book, talks about suffering. So as human beings, we experience suffering. Where does it come from? The root of suffering, the basis of suffering, is due to our limited view of thinking that we are separate. And they call it blindness, but that's an inner blindness, not a physical blindness. So we suffer at a personal level sometimes. We experience fear, anxiety, aggression. And we also suffer at the group level, as a community, as a world. We experience, quote, injustice, racism, exploitation, and violence. Here in the West, in America, sometimes we suffer because we feel unworthy. We feel separate. We feel alone. And Jack Kornfield tells a story in the book that I like. It's a international conference meeting of Buddhist teachers from all over the world. This is in 1989. And he says the Westerners bring up this idea of self-hatred, of feeling this common and enormous problem of unworthiness and self-criticism and self-hatred. And this was shocking to the Asian teachers. In fact, he says that the Dalai Lama was there, and it took the Dalai Lama 10 minutes with his translator to get this concept. What are they talking about? What is this self-hatred? And then once he understood what this term was about, he expressed extreme surprise, and he said, but that's a mistake. Every being is precious. And so this is something that maybe we experience more in the West, is that we have to earn respect. We have to earn worth and value. Whereas maybe in the Eastern traditions, we have worth and value and respect and dignity and nobility just because we exist. Just because of the fact that we exist. So how do we deal with pain? Sometimes we learn to mask our feelings. We learn to numb ourselves. We learn survival skills, being defensive, withdrawing, getting angry. We learn our angry act. We learn all the things that we do to protect ourselves. So what's the solution to suffering? It's compassion. Compassion is the pathway to healing. Compassion is loving kindness. As he says, compassion is seeing our struggles with kindly eyes. So how do we reveal and generate compassion? As human beings in this world, how do we reveal, how do we generate, how do we bring more compassion forth from our beings? It's by being aware of our interconnection, our interconnectedness, by seeing beyond our separate personal selves. For example, the body is a multitude of systems all working together. People are connected to the earth. We depend on the earth for water, food, shelter. Societies involve interconnection on many levels. So it's part of the social contract that we're going to use our skills and our resources and share them. So, for example, our ancestors, they were baking bread or making tools or building structures, making shoes, sewing together warm clothes, just giving their skills for the betterment of the community, for the whole. So in this book, Jack Kornfield makes the statement that all people are connected in consciousness. All people are connected in consciousness. And this is going to be delved into more in the subsequent chapters of the book. But basically, we're all part of one giant spiral. And everything is in the spiral. Nothing is left out. And we're all progressing. The spiral is progressing. So compassion is natural. Compassion is a natural outcome of feeling connected. It's effortless. It arises naturally. So we experience compassion not by striving for it, not by trying to achieve it, but by releasing our sense of lack and limitation. And human development hinges on compassion. If we're going to progress as a species, we need compassion. We need to feel it, release it, and experience it together. So Jack Kornfield says, our individual lives and our whole society are built upon innumerable acts of kindness. Our individual lives and our whole society are built on innumerable acts of kindness. This is how society operates together. I agreed not to steal your food. You agreed to maintain the social contract. So I'll tell you a story. I have from a large family, and we like to take spring break together. So several years ago, we went to a small town in southern Colorado. It's called Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And there's a little river that runs through the town. There's hot springs. And so it's fun to get an inner tube, get a float, walk up to the park, and then just float down the river rapids. So I was there with 13 kids from 4 different families. And these kids are different ages, different heights, different hair color, different body types, just a variety of different kids. So from my vantage point, no matter where I looked, there was a high probability I was going to see some kids from the group that I was with. So whether I looked up the river or down the river or on one bank or on the other bank, pretty much anywhere I looked, there was going to be some of these kids that were part of my family. And what I experienced is that if everywhere I looked, there were kids that I was related to, then I cared about all the kids. It's like all of these kids could be part of the group that I'm in. And I think that's how kids were raised in the past, right? The whole village would raise the children. The whole community would raise the children. So when we see this interconnection, when I felt potentially connected to each and every other being there on the river, I cared. I cared about all of them. So this is how interconnection generates compassion. And the compassion just arises naturally. So what are our practices? What are we about as a spiritual community? Jack Kornfield says, we are opening the boundaries of consciousness. We're opening the boundaries of consciousness. What does that mean? We're expanding awareness. We're providing space for revelation, for realizations, for insights. We're opening doors to possibilities. We're bringing forth our deepest nature. Some people would say our truest nature. And as we do this for ourselves, we affect all of humanity. It just happens naturally. So as we open the boundaries of consciousness, the inevitable result, the inevitable outcome is increasing compassion for all beings. It's like if you had a bunch of butterflies in a container and you go outside and you open that container, those butterflies are just going to fly out naturally. That's just what happens. It's a natural outcome. Or have you ever taken a piece of foam and you try to squish it up, you try to make it contained, you squish it up real small, but as soon as you release it, it's going to expand out and fill the space again. It's just a natural outcome. So one section in this chapter is compassion is courageous. Compassion is courage. It's courageous to open your heart to compassion. This means releasing fear, releasing defensiveness, living with trust, living with perseverance, believing that you're going to be okay no matter what. And it's a lot easier to armor up, right? It's a lot easier to build those walls, build a moat around your castle, shut the doors, shut the windows, don't let anybody in. Been there, done that. It can be a lot harder to live with an open heart. But Jack Kornfield says, quote, closing down is not the way. Closing down is not the way. So yes, life involves loss, pain, uncertainty. But our calling is, as he says, to stand up with dignity and let the heart respond. Stand up with dignity and let the heart respond. And we've got our examples. Martin Luther King Jr., who we just celebrated this past Monday, and Gandhi, and these people who faced persecution and pain and suffering, and they still lived with an open heart and showed up with trust and perseverance. So a Buddhist teaching involves the fierce sword of compassion. The fierce sword of compassion. Compassion sometimes means saying no. So, quote, there is a yes in compassion and there is also a no, said with the same courage of heart. So we say yes to sustaining life and nurturing well-being. Generally, we have permission to sustain life and nurture well-being. And sometimes this means leaving behind relationships and activities that are destructive, that are not nurturing our being. So we work for our highest and best. And Jack Kornfield says, compassion brings us back to life. Compassion brings us back to life. This is how healing happens. This is how healing occurs. This is how we heal ourselves, our families, our communities, and the world. We cultivate this sense of interconnection, this sense of oneness, and then compassion is revealed through us and as us. So this is our mission. This is our task. This is what we do as a spiritual community. We do these practices, meditation, prayer, taking classes, learning, expanding our minds so that we can see and feel this interconnection with all life, all beings. And then the light is revealed, that compassion comes forth. Namaste.
Information about all our events can be found online at unityhouston.org or when you download the Unity of Houston app. Watch services and listen to podcasts online, and be sure to follow us on social media.